the Black Mafia's dark empire continues to thrive despite all odds, with its most powerful bosses still pulling strings to date. These elusive figures operate in secrecy, shaping underground economies and evading law enforcement at every turn. Their stories are a mix of power, danger, and cunning rivaling that births the most thrilling crime dramas. Who are these modern-day kingpins, and how do they remain untouchable? Join us as we delve into the lives of Black Mafia bosses still ruling till 2024. Kenneth Supreme McGriff. This list of Black Mafias begins with Kenneth Supreme McGriff, an American who was a known substance dealer and gangster from New York City. He gained recognition in early 1981 when he created a crack cocaine manufacturing and distribution group named the Supreme Team, based in the Baisley Park Houses area of South Jamaica in Queens, New York City. Under McGriff's leadership, the gang's membership grew into the hundreds, taking control of the crack cocaine trade in the Baisley Park neighborhood where McGriff had grown up. In 1987, McGriff was detained following a collaborative investigation by state and federal agencies. By 1989, he had pleaded guilty to participating in a continuing criminal enterprise and was given a 12-year prison sentence. McGriff was released on parole in early 1994 after serving around 5 years of his term. However, by the end of that year, he had returned to prison due to parole violations, spending an additional 2.5 years before being released again in 1997. After his release on parole in 1994, McGriff explored filmmaking, seeking help from Irv Gotti to adapt the Kenyatta series novel Crime Partners into a movie. However, because of McGriff's criminal history, the FBI quickly began scrutinizing his connections with Murder Inc., leading to a raid on the record label's offices in early 2003. McGriff was suspected of substance trafficking, while other associates at Murder Inc. faced money laundering and conspiracy charges. He was also implicated in the 2002 murder of Run DMC's Jam Master Jay and was found guilty of ordering the 2001 murder of rapper Eric E. Moneybags Smith, in revenge for the death of McGriff's associate, Colbert Black Just Johnson. Additionally, federal agents linked McGriff to an attempted murder targeting rapper 50 Cent. In February 2007, Kenneth McGriff was found guilty of murder for hire by a federal court in the Eastern District of New York. He was accused of paying $50,000 to have two rivals, Eric E. Moneybags Smith and Big Nose Troy Singleton, murdered in 2001. It took the jury 5 days of deliberation before McGriff was convicted of murder conspiracy and substance trafficking. By the 9th of February in 2007, he had been sentenced to life imprisonment. Due to the seizure of almost all his assets, McGriff had to rely on a court-appointed lawyer for his defense. McGriff started serving his life sentence at ADX Florence, a federal supermax facility in Colorado. In 2011, he was moved to the United States Penitentiary, Lee, a high-security prison located in Pennington Gap, Virginia. As of 2021, McGriff is being held at USP McCreary in Pine Knot, Kentucky. However, the next crime boss is considered by many to be even worse. Rafel Edmund. Rafel Edmund III, the comma born on the 26th of November in 1964, was a substance dealer operating in Washington, D.C. during the 1980s. Edmund played a major role in bringing crack cocaine to the Washington, D.C. area during the height of the crack epidemic, which led to a spike in crime rates and earned the city the title of Murder Capital of the United States. It was claimed that Edmund distributed large quantities of cocaine. An indictment involving 2 associates, including Dwayne, stated they had purchased between 1,000 and 2,000 kilos per week in 1992 from the Trujillo Blanco brothers, who were linked to the Medellin cartel. The substances were then sold to local wholesalers in the Washington area. Edmund was known to have spent $457,619 at an upscale Georgetown store called Linear Pity, owned by Charles Wynn, who was later found guilty of 34 counts of money laundering. Edmund's annual income was estimated to be around $300 million. Within a single year, his operation, employing about 150 people, was responsible for committing 30 murders. Edmund was taken into custody on the 15th of April in 1989 at the age of 24. He faced multiple federal charges, including engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise. conspiracy to distribute and possess with intent to distribute more than 5 kilograms of cocaine and over 50 grams of crack cocaine, unlawfully employing a minor, interstate travel in support of racketeering activities, and illegal use of a communications facility. On the 17th of September in 1990, the district court sentenced Edmund to mandatory life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for count 1, life without parole for counts 2 and 5, 60 months for count 11, and 48 months for counts 14, 15, 16, and 18. All sentences were ordered to run at the same time. Rafel Edmund was eventually given a life sentence without the chance of parole. His mother, Constance Bootsy Perry, received a 14-year prison term for her involvement in his substance operations. Several of Edmund's sisters and cousins were also handed prison sentences. While serving time at the Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary in Pennsylvania, Edmund continued his substance activities. He connected with Dixon Dario and Osvaldo Chiqui Trujillo Blanco, the son of Griselda Godmother Trujillo Blanco, who were housed in the same cell block. From behind bars, Edmund was arranging substance deals between traffickers in Washington, D.C. and his Colombian contacts. In 1996, Edmund and another dealer from Atlanta, known as Lowe, were found guilty of conducting narcotics business using the prison phone. Edmund was given an extra 30-year sentence. During an interview with the Bureau of Prisons, Edmund admitted he had spent several hours each day on the phone, sometimes even using 2 lines at once to handle his narcotics trade. Attorney General Eric Holder criticized the Federal Bureau of Prisons for its poor oversight, which allowed substance transactions to occur from inside the prison. In 1996, federal authorities disclosed that Edmund had become an informant for the government. With his cooperation, 11 suspected narcotics dealers operating in Washington, D.C. were arrested. In return, federal prosecutors agreed to request a reduced sentence for Edmund's mother. Rafel Edmund remains in prison, but he is now part of the United States Federal Witness Protection Program. The specific location where he is being held has not been revealed by the government. In 2019, Edmund was brought back to Washington, D.C. for hearings to discuss whether his life sentence could be reduced to time served, based on the information he gave authorities about 20 homicides. At that time, a survey conducted by the District of Columbia Attorney General indicated that half of the D.C. residents believed Edmund should be set free. In 2021, Judge Emmett G. Sullivan approved the government's request for an early release, although Edmund still has an additional 30-year sentence for managing his narcotics operations while in prison. On the 31st of July in 2024, Edmund was moved from prison to a halfway house at an undisclosed location in either Kentucky or Tennessee, under the oversight of the Bureau of Prisons' Nashville Residential Reentry Management Office. However, not every criminal figure is beyond redemption. In fact, the next story is about a remarkable transformation, where a mastermind turned away from crime and found faith in Jesus. Jamila Davis. The story of Jamila T. Davis is a rare one, not often seen. Initially, she was caught up in a large-scale mortgage and bank fraud operation that resulted in a 12.5-year prison sentence. This scheme involved falsifying loan applications and related documents to obtain inflated mortgages worth millions for luxury properties in New Jersey. Davis, alongside her partners, including Brenda Rickard, who was given a 10-year sentence, masterminded this intricate fraud. The operation relied on fake loan applications and documents to trick banks into approving hefty loans. Lehman Brothers and other financial institutions ended up losing millions because of this scheme. Davis's role was part of a larger trend of financial misconduct that included manipulating credit scores and other deceptive practices. While in prison, Davis took a deep dive into self-exploration and healing. She pursued higher education, earning several degrees: an associate degree in psychology, a bachelor's degree in Christian education, and a master's degree in African American ministry. After her release, she continued her studies and earned a PhD in philosophy, with a focus on Christian life coaching. Davis has since used her past experiences to motivate and uplift others. She created a self-help program for women in prison, which has been adopted by various correctional facilities across the nation. Additionally, she became an author, writing several books, including Built to Outlast the Storm, which deals with healing, overcoming trauma, and self-improvement. Beyond her work as an author and educator, Davis is also a community leader and businesswoman. Her story has been shared on several media outlets, such as Love and Hip Hop, VH1's My True Crime Story, and Bertie's Sister Circle. Good for her. However, this next case wasn't as lucky. Haitian Jack. Jacques Haitian Jack Agnon was widely recognized as a music executive and promoter in the rap industry. He had collaborated with major artists like Tupac Shakur, the Notorious Big, Justin Rose, and Wyclef Jean. However, his career took a different turn once his name became linked with criminal activities. Agnon's family moved from Haiti to East Flatbush, Brooklyn, where he got involved in street life during the crack epidemic that swept through the 1980s and 1990s. Later, he shifted into the music scene, working as a club promoter and managing several rappers. He built strong ties in the industry and became known for his connections to influential figures. Despite his success in music, Haitian Jack was often associated with the darker elements of the hip-hop world. His illegal operations extended beyond substance dealing and included extortion and other unlawful activities. His connections with powerful people in the music industry gave him an unusual perspective, enabling him to manipulate and influence the elite while continuing his criminal pursuits. One of the most infamous parts of his legacy is his alleged involvement in the 1994 shooting of rapper Tupac Shakur. This incident took place during a robbery at a recording studio and marked a significant turning point in the East Coast versus West Coast hip-hop feud. Although Jack was never officially charged for the shooting, his name became linked to the attack, solidifying his feared status in both criminal and music communities. Agnon's criminal actions resulted in several convictions. In 2004, he was found guilty of a shooting at a nightclub in Los Angeles, leading to a prison sentence. After this, he was deported to Haiti in 2007, and not much has been heard about him since. This next case is even more infamous. Christopher Dudus Coke. Christopher Dudus Coke became widely known as a powerful Jamaican narcotics lord and the leader of the Shower Posse, a violent criminal organization started by his father, Lester Coke. He was born on March 13, 1969, in Kingston, Jamaica, and grew up in the Tivoli Gardens neighborhood, an area that his father's gang dominated. The Shower Posse gained a reputation for smuggling large amounts of marijuana and cocaine into the United States. Coke assumed leadership of the gang following his father's death in 1992. Under his command, the gang's violent and profitable activities continued. He managed to maintain strong control over the Tivoli Gardens area, where he was often viewed as a protector, offering social aid and support to the community's residents. In 2010, Coke's capture and extradition to the United States led to widespread violence in Jamaica as his followers clashed with law enforcement. He was eventually apprehended at a routine roadblock while attempting to make his way to the U.S. Embassy in Kingston, where he planned to surrender. To avoid detection, Coke tried to disguise himself as a woman, wearing a wig, a second wig as a backup, and a pair of women's sunglasses, but the authorities still identified him despite the disguise. Reverend Al Miller, a well-known evangelical pastor, was also taken into custody for trying to assist with Coke's surrender. Miller reportedly told the police that Coke was afraid for his safety if he handed himself over directly to the police and had requested the pastor's help. Miller had earlier helped facilitate the surrender of Coke's brother just a month before. Fearing for his life, Coke gave up his right to an extradition trial, agreeing to be sent to the United States to face charges. His father had passed away under suspicious circumstances in a prison fire in 1992, while waiting for his own extradition trial in Jamaica. Coke was kept under strict surveillance before being transferred, as authorities worried about possible attacks from his supporters. Coke reportedly chose to surrender and face legal proceedings in hopes of reducing the ongoing substance-related violence in Jamaica, which had claimed the lives of his sister, brother, and father. He explained his choice by stating, "I am making this decision because I now believe it is in the best interest of my family, the Western Kingston community, especially the people of Tivoli Gardens, and most importantly, Jamaica as a whole." In 2011, Coke admitted guilt to federal charges, including racketeering tied to substance trafficking and violent attacks. The United States District Court for the Southern District of New York handed him a sentence of 23 years in federal prison. He is currently serving this term at the Federal Correctional Institution in Fort Dix, New Jersey, a low-security facility. The next person on this list, however, took a different route, becoming an author who detailed his own chilling crimes. Daryl God Whiting. Daryl God Whiting, logically born in Corona, Queens, New York, became widely known during the late 1980s and early 1990s for his violent role as a substance trafficker. He led a group of about 100 people in a substance operation centered at the Orchard Park housing projects in Roxbury, Boston, where he was credited with introducing crack cocaine to the neighborhood. Whiting's illegal activities were marked by extreme violence. He exploited the underprivileged and was known to beat anyone who disobeyed him brutally. His narcotics business made millions of dollars, spreading fear throughout the community. In 1990, he faced multiple convictions, including conspiracy to distribute cocaine and running a continuing criminal enterprise. He was sentenced to life in prison without any chance of release. Even while imprisoned, Whiting continued to attract attention. In 2013, he published a graphic novel featuring a character based on himself, Daryl God Whiting, who plotted violent acts of revenge against those who had testified against him. This book was later used as evidence in 2016 to uphold his life sentence, as it showed he remained a danger to society. Whiting is currently serving his life term at Hazleton Federal Penitentiary. His case serves as a shocking example of the harm caused by substance trafficking and violence in communities. Up next is another dealer who, unlike Whiting, found his path to redemption. Ricky Ross. Ricky Donald Ross. He became notorious for his involvement in the crack cocaine epidemic in Los Angeles during the 1980s. Born on January 26, 1960, in Troop, Texas, Ross later moved to Los Angeles, where he built a vast narcotics empire. Ross gained the nickname Freeway because he owned properties along the Los Angeles Harbor Freeway. His involvement in the cocaine trade began after he was unable to earn a tennis scholarship due to his illiteracy. He started spending time with an upholstery teacher at a Los Angeles community college who revealed his cocaine dealing and offered Ross a small quantity to sell. Ross used the profits to buy more cocaine, expanding his small business. Soon he began requesting larger quantities than the teacher could supply, which led him to seek out a new dealer. The teacher introduced Ross to Ivan Arguelles, who agreed to keep him well stocked with cocaine. Arguelles could provide larger amounts at better prices, and Ross quickly moved from selling grams to selling ounces. However, after about 8 months, Arguelles was shot in the spine, leading to a lengthy hospital stay that forced him out of the cocaine trade. His brother-in-law, Henry Corrales, took over the business but was not as motivated and struggled to establish his own network of suppliers. Danilo Blandon, a Nicaraguan exile and cocaine distributor, was familiar with Arguelles and Corrales, though he did not know them personally. However, he was impressed by the scale of cocaine that Ross was moving. Blandon offered to supply cocaine to Corrales, who would then sell it to Ross, with the profits split 50-50. Eventually, Corrales lost interest in the cocaine business and stepped away, making Ross a direct customer of Blandon. Through his connection to Blandon and Blandon's supplier, Norwin Meneses Cantarero, Ross was able to obtain Nicaraguan cocaine at much lower rates. Ross began selling cocaine for $10,000 per kilogram, a price significantly below the market rate, and distributed it to the Bloods and Crips street gangs. By 1982, Ross had earned the nickname Freeway Ricky and claimed he was selling as much as $3 million worth of cocaine daily, purchasing around 1,000 pounds, which is about 454 kilograms of cocaine per week. Initially, Ross invested most of his profits in real estate and businesses, as he feared his mother would find out about his criminal activities if he started spending lavishly on himself. In an interview from jail with reporter Gary Webb, Ross explained, "We were hiding our money from our mothers." He also invested some of the proceeds from his substance dealing in Anita Baker's first album. In 1996, Ross was sentenced to life in prison under the Three Strikes Law after being convicted of purchasing over 100 kilograms of cocaine from a federal agent in a sting operation. However, his sentence was later reduced to 20 years after an appeal, and he was released from prison in 2009. Since his release, Ross has made significant changes in his life. He has become both an author and a public speaker, using his story to warn others about the dangers of substance trafficking and the criminal justice system. Additionally, he has been involved in several community initiatives and entrepreneurial ventures. These criminals, considered some of the most notorious on this list, have also been featured in documentaries and on television. Who were they? The Flenory brothers. Demetrius Edward "Big Meech" Flenory Sr., born on June 21, 1968 in Detroit, Michigan, and his brother Terry Lee Southwest T. Flenory, born on January 10, 1968-70, also in Detroit, started selling $50 bags of cocaine on the streets of Detroit during their high school years in the late 1980s. Their original group was known as the 50 Boys. By the year 2000, the Flenory brothers had built a significant organization that managed multi-kilogram cocaine distribution across several U.S. states, including Alabama, California, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, North Carolina, Ohio, and Tennessee. A 2-year federal investigation into their operations estimated that the organization had over 500 members nationwide. The Flenory brothers were recognized for their extravagant lifestyles, which included expensive cars, designer clothes, and high-profile connections within the hip-hop industry. By the year 2000, BMF's operations had reached their peak, moving hundreds of kilograms of cocaine and expanding into major cities like Atlanta and Detroit each month. Around 2003, the organization faced internal conflict when the brothers began to argue, with Terry moving to Los Angeles to run his own operation, while Demetrius stayed at the main distribution center in Atlanta. That same year, the brothers had a serious fallout and rarely communicated. In a wiretapped conversation with his brother, Terry expressed concern that Demetrius was attracting unwanted attention to their business with his partying lifestyle. By the time charges were filed against the Flenory brothers, the government had accumulated 900 pages of wiretap transcripts from Terry's phone over a 5-month period. In 2005, both Terry and Demetrius were arrested by the DEA and faced charges of running a continuing criminal enterprise, narcotics trafficking, and money laundering. In November of 2007, the brothers admitted to running a continuing criminal enterprise. In September of 2008, both were sentenced to 30 years in prison for managing a nationwide cocaine trafficking operation that ran from the year 2000 to 2005. Demetrius Flenory served his sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Sheridan and was released on October 16, 2024. Terry Flenory, on the other hand, was granted home confinement on May 5, 2020, after receiving compassionate release due to health issues and an initiative by the Federal Bureau of Prisons to reduce the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic by releasing certain inmates. Demetrius also requested his release under the same conditions, but a federal judge rejected the request, stating that it was too soon to consider his release. The judge cited Demetrius's prison record, which suggested that he had not changed and continued to portray himself as a substance kingpin. Additionally, the judge noted that his disciplinary record included infractions such as possessing a cell phone, weapons, and using substances. Terry Flenory stays active on social media, especially Instagram, where he shares aspects of his life and promotes the Starz series BMF, which dramatizes the story of the Black Mafia family. Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols. Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols, born on December 25, 1958, was an American convicted former substance kingpin who operated a complex narcotics trafficking ring in the 1980s in Jamaica, Queens. One of the key figures in Nichols's operation was his prison friend, Howard Pappy Mason. Another trusted associate was Luke Spoon Stephen, along with Joseph Mike Bones Rogers. Nichols ran his business from Big Mac's Deli, a place he had inherited from his father-in-law. He received the nickname Fat Cat because of his thick neck, a large head that nearly blocked the faces of his friends in pictures, and his long beard, as noted in the book Queens Reigned Supreme, Fat Cat, 50 Cent, and the Rise of the Hip-Hop Hustler. Nichols pleaded guilty to ordering the murders of 2 individuals. One was a childhood friend, and the other was his ex-girlfriend, Myrtle Horsham, a 20-year-old woman and the mother of his son. The murder of Horsham led Nichols' mother, Louise Coleman, to sever ties with him. A recount of Nichols's plea in the New York Times described a sealed courtroom exchange, where Judge Edward R. Corman of the Federal District Court in Brooklyn asked, "Was one of the purposes of this to teach other people in the organization a lesson about not stealing from you?" Nichols responded, "It wasn't just the stealing. It was the fact that she was my girl and she took my money and spent it on someone else. She made me look bad in front of people within the organization." However, his criminal activities didn't stop there. In 1992, Nichols again pleaded guilty, this time for ordering the murder of his parole officer, Brian Rooney. He was sentenced to 25 years to life for the crime. In addition, he pleaded guilty to charges of substance trafficking and racketeering, which led to an additional sentence of 40 years. In 2010, the New York Daily News published a letter Nichols had written from his prison cell. In the letter, Nichols reflected, saying, "I have nothing but time to think about my wrongdoings," and added, "To the victims of my criminal activities, I offer my deepest regret and sincerest apology." By April 2022, Nichols was granted parole and released from state prison. He was transferred from Clinton Correctional Facility to federal custody. After his story, the second woman criminal mastermind on this list, who also made a significant change in her life, will be examined next. Jemeker Thompson. Jemeker Thompson Hairston was an American substance dealer who became a key figure in the cocaine trade during the height of the crack epidemic in the United States during the 1980s. She was based in south-central Los Angeles and had cocaine distributors operating in multiple cities across the country. She was known for her talent in track during high school and was the girlfriend of Anthony Daff Mosley, who was dealing marijuana. Thompson began collecting payments for his business. While still in high school, she started selling between 3 and 4 kilos of cocaine a week. She and Daff married in 1980 and soon began selling crack cocaine. As her narcotics operation grew, they purchased a home in Encino, California, and by 1982, they had a son. When Daff was murdered, DEA agents, who had been monitoring Thompson. However, by 1984, she expanded her business again by recruiting distributors across the US and started sourcing cocaine directly from Colombia. At 26, Thompson launched a hair distribution business, which she claimed was legitimate, but authorities suspected it was used to launder narcotics money. Thompson's business partner, Percy Cheese Bratton, was arrested with kilos of cocaine in his car. He struck a deal with investigators, providing enough evidence to indict Thompson. Despite her attempts to avoid capture, she was arrested at her son's 6th grade graduation ceremony at the age of 31. Thompson was charged with conspiracy to distribute cocaine and 5 counts of money laundering. She was indicted, convicted, and served 12 years of her 15-year sentence. While in prison, she converted to Christianity, and after her release, started a Christian ministry called Second Chance Evangelical Ministries, the 700 Club, a show on the Christian Broadcasting Network. Jeff Fort. Jeff Fort, also known as Abdul Malik Kaaba, became a significant figure in American crime history, particularly in Chicago. Born on February 20, 1947, in Aberdeen, Mississippi, he co-founded the Blackstone Rangers gang, which later transformed into the Black P. Stones and eventually the El Rucan faction. Fort's criminal career began in his youth, and he quickly rose to power as a gang leader. Under his leadership, the Black P. Stones grew to become one of Chicago's most influential and violent gangs, engaging in substance trafficking, extortion, and murder. His strong organizational skills helped him unite several gangs under the Black P. Stones name. During the 1980s, his criminal enterprise expanded further, and he became involved in a plan to carry out terrorist attacks in exchange for weapons and funds from Libya. As a result, he was convicted of conspiracy and weapons charges in 1987. He was also convicted of substance trafficking and ordering a murder in 1981. Fort is currently serving a sentence of 168 years at the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado. Even while incarcerated, he remains a key figure in the history of gang violence. The next case, however, drew such national attention that even celebrities became involved. Larry Hoover. Larry Hoover, logically born on November 30, 1950, in Jackson, Mississippi, is widely recognized as a notorious figure in American criminal history. He is credited with founding the Chicago Street Gang, known as the Gangster Disciples. Hoover's criminal involvement began at an early age when he joined the Supreme Gangsters in Chicago. By the late 1960s, he had merged his group with the Black Disciples, creating the Black Gangster Disciple Nation, or BGDN, which eventually became known as the Gangster Disciples. As Hoover's influence grew, the Gangster Disciples became one of Chicago's most powerful and violent gangs, heavily engaged in substance trafficking, extortion, and various other illegal activities. In 1973, Hoover was convicted of ordering the murder of a substance dealer, William Young, and was sentenced to a term of 150 to 200 years in prison. Even while incarcerated, Hoover continued to control the gang. In 1997, after a lengthy investigation lasting 17 years, he was convicted of conspiracy, extortion, money laundering, and operating a continuing criminal enterprise from prison, earning him an additional life sentence. Hoover is currently serving 6 life sentences at the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado. His case has attracted considerable attention, and some well-known figures, including Kanye West and Drake, have publicly advocated for his release, claiming that he has served enough time and has shown signs of reform. Guy Fischer. For the final case of mafia crime bosses, we turn our attention to Guy Fischer, a significant figure in American organized crime, particularly in Harlem, New York. Born on July 21, 1947, Fischer became a prominent member of the Council, an African-American crime syndicate that dominated the heroin trade in Harlem from 1972 to 1983. The Council had been founded by Nicky Barnes, with Fischer being one of its leading figures. Fischer's criminal activities ranged from substance trafficking to racketeering and even murder. He gained a reputation for his business skills and his effective management of the organization's operations. In 1977, Fischer made history by becoming the first black man to own and operate the Apollo Theater in Harlem. In 1984, Fischer was convicted on several counts of RICO, which stands for Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations, violations including criminal conspiracy, substance trafficking, and murder. His conviction was largely supported by the testimony of his former mentor, Nicky Barnes, who became a government informant after feeling betrayed by Fischer. Fischer was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. However, in a surprising turn, Fischer was granted a medical pardon and released from federal custody on October 28, 2020. His criminal activities and life have been featured in several documentaries and media portrayals, examining his influence on the Harlem community and the broader criminal world. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.